Hmm. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in Manifesting Love and Light. My name is Rachel Jensen with Acupuncture with Rachel. And today we have a very special interview with actually an experiential for you all. So this is the first experiential like this that we are having on Manifesting Love and Light. And I am so excited, especially for the guest that we have on today. And I will do a little bit of an introduction, kind of read some stuff off of her website, and then I'll hand it over to Erin, our guest, so she can tell you in her words who she is and what her work is to do in this world. So first and foremost, if you're curious about intuitive aura readings, you're going to want to stick around. So that's what we're going to be doing the last piece. And we actually have a group of people here that you can't, I don't know if you can see them right now, actually. I've never recorded a group. But I don't think so. I don't know. We'll see. And Erin's going to be doing readings on each of these beautiful women here. So you are going to be like a fly on the wall to see how that goes. And before that, we're just going to be doing a back and forth interview like the rest of them, talking to Erin about, her life during the pandemic. What does it look like to her right now? We'll talk a little bit about her offerings and anything else that just falls out of our mouths. We'll just let that go. So without further ado, let me get into who we have on today. So I have her website pulled up here, so I'll be referring to that. And her name is Erin Anderson. She has a business called The Gold Runner in the Twin Cities here in Minnesota. And right off of her website, it lists that Erin Anderson is an author, energy alchemist, I love that, well-being practitioner, clairvoyant reader, mindful witch, love that, and a ritual master of ceremonial magic in a King Solomon lineage. That's a lot. And I'm not going to even attempt to piece apart what any of that means to Erin. So now I will hand the mic over to you, Erin, and you can do an introduction to everybody we have here.
Right. Well, thank you, Rachel, for having me. We've been talking about doing this for a while, and I've really been looking forward to this opportunity to connect with you in this way. And also I've been really looking forward to doing this in the group setting. It really brings a different kind of energy, I think, to be able to have this conversation with other people present. The container changes and we get to participate differently. And for everyone also who is listening to this recording, you also get to be part of that group energy as well. So that was something that both Rachel and I felt was going to be important to this particular discussion. And as Rachel mentioned, I have an energy healing practice called the Gold Runner, and I have been practicing kind of in this capacity for about 5 years. I started my journey in earnest just to really understand more deeply my own energy, the dynamics of how the different systems of my body and my spirit work together about 8 years ago. And I started doing that because of some things that I was dealing with in my personal life, having to do just with issues of trust, especially in partnerships, in romantic relationships that I had felt had just kind of taken a turn for the damaging and for the toxic for many, many years. And I was to a point where I felt like I didn't know how to trust myself. I didn't know what the signals that I was getting, what was me and what was someone else. And very fortunately, I met someone who was in the middle of a training to develop her clairvoyance. And it was something I had been interested in for a long time. I had received readings, different kinds of psychic readings for many years, and just always thought, it would be so wonderful to have that kind of access to my own answers, and had looked for ways of doing that, but really just thought that if I wasn't sort of full blown, like having visions every single day, that I didn't have any kind of, proclivity to that, or any kind of experience that would be useful. So what I learned through the experience of that training, which was very intensive for about 3 years, I did the training. And what I learned is that, as probably many of you know, we all have those gifts. And the question is how much we're ready, willing, and able to put into developing them, how willing we are to listen to ourselves. And I had just gotten to a point where there weren't any other options. I had been pushing aside my own inner wisdom for so long that I had reached a kind of crisis point. And so I was ready. And it was like life. It was life-giving. And one of the most important things I learned through the clairvoyant training was really how to set energetic boundaries. That's before doing any kinds of readings, and before coming to this session today. I've already done about an hour of meditation and of the rituals that I do every day as part of my personal practice. And that's just to make sure that I am clear enough to do these readings so that I'm not putting my energy into the situation. So it really ended up being about setting healthy boundaries energetically and doing that. And I always knew that was important, but I never really knew what that looked like, what that meant. I didn't really have any good examples in my life of someone who was doing that on a regular basis. And I think what I understand now is that it's a practice that I cultivate, and that anyone who is doing this kind of work, or anyone who wants to set boundaries, that it's something we do every day. It's something we choose every day. It's not that some of us are just born with boundaries that we don't have to tend to. It's a work in progress. It always is. And I feel really good that I'm able to look back and see how far I've come. I also feel frustrated a lot of days with where I know that I want to be and I'm not there yet, but I have tools and I have the knowledge that anytime I need extra support, that I know people that I can go to. And I think that's something else that I have learned too over the years, is that the more tools that I have, the more tempting it is to feel like I'm supposed to be doing all of this by myself, and that I shouldn't need help anymore. So it's some of that enters in as well. And that's something I just have to keep in mind, is that there are things that we can and that we must do for ourselves. That's that very important self-care piece. And then there are things that we are meant to understand from other people. This is what keeps us in community. We are social creatures, and we're not meant to have it all figured out by ourselves. So I think part of the gift of this work has been understanding where I can be empowered to take steps for myself, and where I can be empowered to ask for help. And I think too that is something that that's a conversation that I have with my clients too, that because some of them feel a little bit of a conflict in coming to do this kind of work. Some of it has to do with the fact that we are told that this kind of work maybe isn't real or doesn't have validity. Absolutely. Depending on the circles that you kind of run in. But also it has to do with we should, if nothing else, we should have control over our own thoughts, or our own mind, or our own heart. And quite to the contrary, I think that when we are open and when we are vulnerable to receiving guidance, receiving wisdom, and understanding that we're all in this together, that's when I think the really beautiful and really interesting stuff starts happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction and just sharing those pieces of you. So much in there. And one thing that landed for me was this idea that, that we all have these gifts, right? And this stuff is, new online for me within the past 2 or 3 years, right? I grew up, and you touched on this with, oh, that's just your imagination. It's nothing. You don't really, you can't predict those things. And coming into understanding that, wait, everybody actually has this. It's just a matter of, do you tap into it or not, was so what?
Yeah.
What the fuck? Really?
Yeah, deal. Right.
Yeah, it's huge. And I just have to mention that I've been watching you on Instagram, like that's just how Instagram happens, probably for like the past few years. We have Portia Richardson in common, probably a few other people, but that's the main person that I see. She's near and dear to my heart. She's a friend and a mentor. And so I am just beyond the moon, so excited to just get to talk with you and to pick your brain a little bit here, and then to watch you do your magic. So I think we're going to do 6 readings. So that's 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes. Okay, and so watching the time now, we just have maybe a few minutes. If we could just get into a little bit about like the nuts and bolts of these conversations came from COVID-19 and this pandemic that currently we are in right now, and really wanting to get other people's perspectives on how they're living their life right now. Do they attach meaning to this? Do they not attach meaning to this? A very open-ended question to just simply say, I started out saying, what do you think is going on? And then sometimes I'd get responses with, I don't really think about that. Mm-hmm. So know that it can go both ways, right? So what do you think / not think about this pandemic right now?
Yeah, I think that as with anything in our lives, there are layers. I see a lot of parallels just with doing healing work with an individual. There's a physical component to this, certainly, that is the surface kind of obvious stuff of what's going on, what the media is talking about, what people are experiencing in their physical bodies, how we are being directed to and guided to change our daily routines. That's the physical component, and that is where a lot of the suffering is happening, the very real suffering, the very difficult, painful, hurt that's happening right now for people who are losing livelihoods, people who are losing loved ones, and people who are just sort of faced with having to kind of be in their stuff right now, because we don't have a lot of the normal distractions or the normal activities that we are used to, that we've grown accustomed to. So there's the fact of the physical disease, the physical organism that is causing this stress, or that's getting in on that stress in our bodies and is wreaking havoc with our physical immune systems. There's also the emotional component. People, again, and this is like being in our own stuff, or being kind of without those distractions, where we are maybe forced to experience some emotions that we tend to shy away from, turn our backs on entirely, really recoil from, because they're uncomfortable or they're downright painful or traumatic. And that's something that really starts to happen the moment that we slow down and that we become still. So in a way, it's like this is the thing that kind of it's like rushing in. It's like drinking from the fire hose. It's like what meditation, I feel like, tries to do. And because I teach a lot of meditation classes and I do a lot of meditation, I feel like in small doses, meditation simulates that, it's pulling back from some of those distractions. It's coming into your own body. It's focusing on the breath, and it's a practice, and it can be a very uncomfortable practice. Sometimes it can be wonderfully, euphoric, but most of the time it's just like, well, here we are once again with ourselves. And that is happening on just an extraordinary scale right now. We are just with ourselves. And so that's the, some of the emotional component. And then I think on the spiritual and energetic level, that's where I feel like that's where the action is, or will be, kind of when we move out of the physical and out of the emotional. And that's what I'm most interested in right now. Not to say that I'm not, I have compassion for those who are suffering. I've been very fortunate to not be directly affected by, people I love who are sick. but that is real, and so that should not be discounted. But I'm really interested and fascinated by, and I feel very hopeful when I'm looking at the spiritual and the energetic aspect of all of this, because what's happening way, way, way up above what our physical bodies are experiencing is a paradigm shift. And I don't know how else to say it. It's a word that I think gets thrown around a lot in the spiritual community. But if ever there was a time to say that that's what's happening, it's just like everything is being retooled, everything is being repatterned. And it's happening so far out of the control of any of our, human selves that, like, what else? I don't know what else would be the definition of that. This is something that is like on the grandest scale imaginable, and it's been making me think as though, or feel as though, the lineage of King Solomon tradition, the spiritual lineage that I practice, there's a lot there, a lot of connection to the earth. So we speak a lot about the energies of the earth, but there's a lot that we also do with galactic energies. And this is a tradition that very much believes that we have origins outside of this earth, that the earth is our home, but that we have connections to the stars, to the cosmos, and to the galaxy. And it really feels to me as though that this is some kind of intervention, or that we are being asked to finally maybe step up and be a part of the galactic community in a way that we haven't before. And just to keep it from getting sort of too far out there conceptually, I think that probably it would be hard to say that we haven't done some wrong to our earth. Even the most staunch sort of resistor to environmental responsibility would say, like, yeah, we probably have made some missteps. I think it goes far beyond that. And I think that we're being called to task in some ways, or at least called to say, like, here's what I'm willing to do now. Here, let's maybe say that we have gotten comfortable in the way that things are, and maybe nothing else except something on this scale could take us out of that comfort zone and say, all right, what do we want to choose going forward? Mistakes have been made, or we haven't done our best. And that doesn't have to be the way that it always is. We can do things differently. We can love each other better. We can be more responsible in terms of the way that we use our time, perhaps, or the way that we engage with our planet. And I just think the opportunities are extraordinary and endless. And so what has me feeling really hopeful, again, kind of when I get up and out of the emotional and the physical, is just this idea that we are being given the gift of this opportunity. And I do feel like we have a lot of assistance. I feel like we have assistance from beings of light, from angels, and from our kind of galactic neighbors who are like, we are in this together, and we are in this together. It's also not even just our planet, but it's so much bigger than that. And I think it feels to me both exciting and terrifying to recognize that this is a moment of truth, or this is a turning point where we can say, like, yeah, I think we're ready to do things differently. And I have felt that, and maybe some of you have as well, and just seeing how creative people are getting with how they're supporting the businesses or the people that they care about in ways that we would have thought of before. And I hate to use the phrase necessity is the mother of invention, but I just did. I mean, that is sort of what I feel like we get to re-experience too, is how innovative we are, how resourceful we are as human beings, and how full of life and creativity. And for every moment that I feel throughout a day of, this is hard for people, I feel that suffering, I also feel like this is amazing. I didn't know that people were capable of this. What might I be capable of? So I think I think it's pushing us to really reimagine where we're going to be when the dust settles, but even just where we're going to be right now. And then behind that, I think we just have an opportunity to go deep within ourselves and to understand that we are not just this body, that who we really are sits outside of our human identity. And I think as much as we can come back to that, or as much as we can challenge the ideas that we've maybe held on to pretty tightly for a while about who we are, what we stand for, what are we all about? I think as much as we can maybe start to release our grasp on that, our tight grasp on that, the more opportunities we'll see for how we want to move forward.
There's so much in there. And when I do these interviews, I'm so excited to rewatch, because they're rewatch, stop, think, okay, play, okay, then stop, think, because there's so much in there. It's hard to grab everything. I think the question that's really on my mind, and you've tapped into it a little bit. There's typically 3 questions I ask, but because this is we actually have an experiential after this, I want to be mindful of the time and just handpick one that I really want to ask you, which is personally, what wounds are you being shown right now? Or what medicine are you finding for your life during this pandemic?
Yeah, well, for a couple of reasons, what I am being shown, or what I'm kind of re-experiencing right now, is some of the wounds that I have just around, again, that relationships with men, romantic relationships with men. So I live with my fiance, and we've been living together for about a year. And so we had already kind of settled into our routine. He also has a 7-year-old boy who spends about half of his time with us. And we have a small apartment. And so there's not a lot of space. And that was already an adjustment for us when we made this decision about a year ago. And I've found that it was actually a little bit before we started getting the ideas that we were going to have to be maybe sheltering in place or staying at home. There was already some stuff kind of stirred up between the two of us, where it just felt like we were not on the same wavelength, and it was nobody doing or saying something in particular that didn't feel okay. It was just like, gosh, what is happening here? And why do I feel so kind of off? And I noticed, and that continued for a while. And I feel like we kind of have ridden that out now. But what I felt like I was coming up against was, again, the invitation to either listen to myself, to set my boundaries, whatever that might mean, or to feel like there's been some kind of personal attack on my character because of some misunderstanding that we have. And that is usually where I go with it in my mind. When there is a misunderstanding, misunderstanding equals me feeling misunderstood, which is a very, kind of self-centered kind of place to come from. And sometimes that may be the case. If there's a misunderstanding, maybe someone is not understanding me the way that I want them to understand me. But that also is no reason for me then to feel like I'm justified in kind of turning that back on them. And I found myself really being pulled to do that. Well, if you're going to think this about me, which you may or may not do, then I am going to shut down, or I am going to, willfully misunderstand you. And it was within this little petri dish that I feel like we were in. It was both amusing and just like infuriating to watch myself do this. Because again, without those distractions, I was able to see some of some of the patterns that I had gotten caught in, and man, it was so uncomfortable because it was so unflattering, and and that was just my side of it. You know, he had his own thing going on, but it was really frustrating to see. And it, for a time, I thought, wow, I've not made any progress at all, despite all of this, you know, work that I've done. And then I thought, no, wait, this feels different, because this is like a review of where we've been before. And I felt like I went through some of those cycles of anger, you know, feeling betrayed, feeling sad, just like grieving, and then coming back out. And I once heard someone, and now I'm forgetting who it was, but I come back to this image a lot of a witch's hat, and that we have, there are a lot of lessons, of course, that come to us, but there are some core lessons that we are really here to maybe master, hopefully, eventually, but to engage with. That's part of our life purpose. And that we may start out kind of at the base of that witch's hat, where we're in this cycle, we're going around and around. And so because we're going around and around, we keep coming back. Like, let's say we keep coming back to the same point of that same lesson. But each time we do, you know, we're moving up. So this is a metaphor of moving up and out of it. And so the spiral becomes quicker. The turnaround becomes a little more swift, because we have knowledge. We have what we learned last time. And if we can be aware enough to apply what we learned last time, then maybe we can advance ourselves more quickly up and out. So it doesn't mean that we're never going to come back to those lessons. And I think that's been something that's hard to accept, but also then it's more interesting. And I feel like, okay, here you are again. It's no less uncomfortable than it was last time, but here's what we're going to do. Here's what didn't work before. And so that's one of the things that I have found really quickly, that came up pretty quick, because it is one of those core things for me. And I know that it's always going to be there in some way, shape, or form. I also feel like there are another one of my lessons that's coming and that hasn't quite hit, but I can just sort of feel it like amassing, is around abundance and lack. And you know, I have two businesses. One is a freelance writing business, and then the other is the healing practice. And trying to balance those has been a challenge, really a challenge that has been kind of more than just on a practical scale, but it's been some existential, you know, crises here and there over the past few years. And this time right now too is showing me that while I thought I was, you know, ready to let the writing business go, that's all I have right now, at least that can help sustain me right now. I'm doing a little bit of the healing work, but that's what is supporting me. And so I think, okay, well, what does it mean that does that mean that I'm not ready to be a healer full time? Yes. How does that challenge my identity when that's what I feel like that's where my passion is? And that's a little bit of a lighter lesson right now. Like I said, I feel like there's something that's going to kind of crack things open, and I'm sure it will. It won't be pretty, but I feel
it usually isn't.
I feel too that with some of, I guess partly with knowing that we're all in this together. And I think that has been just a wonderful reminder to me, not in a misery has like loves company sort of way, but just like there's support that comes from everywhere and from the most unexpected places. I think it's teaching me to maybe trust in moments of uncertainty as possible open doors rather than just scary places. So the uncertainty means that it goes both ways too, and to maybe not look so side-eyed at uncertainty and think, you know, what could be on the other side of this could be so much better than what I am imagining. So that's something else that I've been kind of contemplating and meditating on. Yeah, I think those two things right now. I also just have really experienced, I think, a sense of longing for family and for friends that I haven't in a while. And I think that has to do with how busy I have made myself and have felt like I've needed to be in order to sustain the kind of work that I want to do. And it has been a source of kind of conflictedness in my mind and in my heart for some time. Like, what do I need to give up in order to make my livelihood work, and in order to help people? Does it actually mean that I have to give up some of the beautiful connections that I have? And I think I had just taken for granted that maybe it does, or maybe I am just crossing my fingers and hoping that those relationships will still be there when I'm done doing what I need to do. And I think there are other ways. And I think that's what I'm understanding, is that it doesn't have to be so either or. And to remember that we are multidimensional beings, and that we're not always so stuck in, our space-time continuum. And you touched on that, I think, before you started the recording, just that there's, when people tune back into this recording, or tune in for the first time and weren't here for the moment of the recording, what do you say? What does that say about time anyway? Yes, it's there in a certain way, and it's not in a certain way. And I think that's a really interesting way of approaching any of these situations that we're being shown, any of these lessons that we're learning, is what happens when we strip out the idea of a limited time or a limited space. Then how would we do things differently if we didn't feel those pressures, or if we didn't take that as the only kind of container in which to see our lives or experience what it is that we're experiencing? So I think just remembering that that my physical body might feel like, yeah, it has to be one thing or the other, but what if I just set that aside and let things be a little more expansive than that? Maybe I don't have to choose.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us, and being vulnerable and letting us into your life and what you're experiencing now. I know wounds aren't always fun or feel safe to talk about necessarily. And so I really want to honor that piece of you that showed up. So thank you very much for sharing that with us, everybody on the call,
Pleasure.
for anybody else who's going to jump on. Yeah. So there's so many things swirling around in my head, and so many different ways we could go. And I think at this point in time, I'm going to set aside the questions I had for you and just get into the readings, if that feels good to you. Okay.
Great. Yeah.
So I hope the way this shows up for people who watch this later is that they're going to see the face of the person that you're doing the reading on. And if anybody has any pointers on how we could do that, let me know. I think maybe just taking you off mute might let it toggle between you and Erin. So I think I'll try that, if that's okay with everybody. Okay, so I'm going to mute myself, and then how do you want to choose who goes first, second, third, and so on, Erin?
Well, I think the easiest way might be just to have someone either raise their hand or just start talking. Okay. And I think before we do that, I'll just reiterate that when someone asks the question, I will turn around and I will have that person say out loud their full given birth name, unless they're choosing to type it in the chat to remain anonymous for the recording. And then I'll do the reading. And what I'm going to be looking at is I'm looking at the aura of the person who's asking the question. That's our aura has a lot of information that is kind of available in our kind of energetic ecosystem. And what I'm kind of tuning into, 3 different things: colors, symbols, and pictures that kind of combine to tell a story about where you are working right now. What are the challenges you're up against? What are the opportunities that might be available for you? And so in order to get the most out of each person's reading, I'm going to invite you to, instead of, because these are not predictions, this is not a fortune kind of reading sort of thing. This is a reflection of your energy in present time. And so questions that work really well, if you're at a point of uncertainty or you're wondering about a choice that you need to make, a really great way of kind of getting into that is by asking, what are my growth opportunities for this choice? Or if I make this choice, what do I get to have in my life? What comes through for me? And then we can take a look at the other aspect. If it's a kind of A or B kind of thing, that's a good way of getting the most out of that question. You can also ask things like, what should I understand about such and such situation? Or what is the lesson here? If you are feeling like your energy might be stagnating with a job or with a relationship, you can say, what does my energy look like with this person or with this job? What would be a next step for me clearing some of that energy so I know the choice to make? So that's the sort of thing that kind of tends to work really well with this type of reading. Also, with regard to interpersonal relationships and specific people, we can look at what contracts or agreements, spiritual you might have with, see. And another great question that seems to be lately right now with clients that I'm working with is, what can I be doing to live in alignment with my purpose? There's a lot of introspection right now for a lot of reasons. And so, just some examples, but whatever your question may be, don't worry about formulating it correctly. We can kind of shape that together. So I would say just kind of come out with whatever is on your mind, and we can finesse it together. Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I was going to ask you to do an introduction, and you just intuitively did it. So thank you. Yeah. So for people who don't understand what's going on, now you do. Yeah. And I want to just thank everybody, all the beautiful souls that are on the call live right now. Just thank you guys. I know I mentioned it in the interview, but again, thanking you for hearing the call. I know this can be a vulnerable, scary place to be in, not only being recorded, but having a healing session recorded. So again, thank you very much for showing up today and weaving this gathering with us. And at any time, you can take the video off. Like if she goes to read you, feel free to take the video off if it doesn't feel safe to you. Other than that, I'm really excited to watch this unfold. So I'm going to mute myself, and then I think we'll start with Jessica. Does that sound good? Okay. All right. Muting myself.
Okay. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you just great. Do you have a question ready to go that you would like to ask, or do you, what's on your mind, in your heart?
Yeah. So do you want me to start with my name?
You can ask your question first, and then when I go into meditation, I'll ask you to say your name, but just let's get a kind of sense of where we're going to head with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question is really just kind of the last one that you alluded to. How can I live in alignment to find my purpose in life? I've really been struggling with that and looking for a way to move forward into this next phase of my life, and that's kind of what I'm looking for, is some guidance on moving forward, and because I'm finding a lot of frustration.
Okay. All right. So we'll be looking at the energy of you living in alignment with your purpose, and maybe see if anything comes up in terms of what you might be dealing with that frustration, where that might be coming from, and then really kind of a next step to keep you moving forward. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm going to, I'll have my eyes closed as I'm doing the readings. If you want to go ahead and mute after you say your name, that's fine, but please interject if you feel like what I'm where I'm going, or if I repeat the question and it doesn't sound correct, then let me know. So I'm going to be taking a look again at that energy of your living in alignment with your purpose. And if at this time you can say out loud, please, your full given birth name.
Jessica Lynn McCurdy.
All right. Okay, Jessica, so the first thing that I'm going to do here is just very quickly acknowledge your original essence by describing the color that I see. And the color here is a deep emerald, and it's a color of great courage, of a kind of passion that's not the sort of the fiery passion that changes a lot. This is a passion that suggests vitality and a kind of long-term sustained passion just for the way that you show up in the world, for the way that you live, like the passion of the trees, the grass, nature to kind of spring forth every year and kind of maybe be behind the scenes for a while as the seasons change, but then to hold on to that sense of vitality all through the seasons and to come back every year renewed and refreshed. So I'm going to take a look now directly at that question about you living in alignment with your purpose. And the color that I see here is a blue that kind of matches in intensity that deep emerald. So it's a deep color, but it also has a real vibrancy to it, a kind of shimmer to it. I'm just going to take a moment to kind of let that develop and see what the picture is. Okay, so the picture that I see here for you living in alignment with your purpose, it may not be the thing that you want to hear, because what I see happening is you have set up on a card table, you have a jigsaw puzzle that you're putting together. And you have, and it's one of these very intricate, thousands of pieces puzzle here. And you have a real facility with putting this together. So you're much more capable at kind of finding the patterns in the very subtle nuances of the color shifts, the way that the shadows fall, and the way that I see you putting this puzzle together. It's almost like every time you reach for a piece, you sort of know before you look at it with your physical eyes where it's going to be. So there's a lot of intuitive guidance here. The reason why I said this might not be what you want to hear is because in your truth, when it comes to kind of working with your purpose and being in alignment with your purpose, is very much a kind of wait and see approach, where you don't necessarily have a strategy or a fleshed out plan. You are very comfortable and you tend to kind of hit your stride in working with your purpose when you are open to all possibilities. So again, just kind of like almost reaching in blindly, at least with the physical eyes blindly, and just being like, whatever I pull out next is going to be the part of the puzzle that is most advantageous or most kind of auspicious for me to be working with. So you're not focused on what's already kind of developed or what you've already put together. You're more interested in what is next, and you're not really that controlling. You're not really that concerned about what is coming next, because you do feel that guidance. And again, the reason I say that might not be what you want to hear is that is a level of kind of working with spirit that you may feel in certain moments, but you might feel in other moments like you really want something specific. You mentioned that frustration, and so this picture might not do much to kind of alleviate that immediate frustration, but what I would like for or what I would hope for you is that knowing how much more you get out of your purpose and out of your alignment when you can kind of take your hands off the wheel, and when you can invite that sense of surrender. That's when you really start to find, again, that's when you really start to find your stride. That's when you really start to find your rhythm. And that's when just joy comes into the picture. That's something else I see in this color of blue, and that brilliance and that kind of shimmeriness is joy. And for you, that you deserve to have that joy be a very integral piece of your purpose. So it isn't just about, I make sure that I am living my purpose. No, that purpose should feel joyful, it should feel playful, should feel in some kind of sense like it's a game or like it's a puzzle that is always changing, because of one thing that you add to the picture changes the whole kind of equation. And so allowing that kind of serendipitousness to be part of your process, that's when you really start to feel like, okay, here's where I'm living my purpose, because I feel that joy. So that joy can be kind of your cue. When you're feeling that, you can know that that's what you're operating within. So I'm going to kind of close up that picture, and we'll call that our first mini reading here. And normally I would love to kind of check in with you and see how that resonates. And if people have more time, I'm willing to do that, but I do want to, maybe we can come back to that. So we'll keep going with the readings for right now. And if you can stick around, maybe we'll debrief if anyone would like to.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. All right, who is next?
I'll just go down the line of what I see in my screen. So Hannah is next.
Okay.
Hi,
Hannah.
Erin. I'm Hannah.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So I have kind of a specific question. So something that I've been struggling with lately is like every time I feel like it's time to take another step into like maturity, whether it's like settling down with a nice man or like putting more focus into growing my business, I feel this feeling like I have to like jettison part of my youth, or like jettison like let go of some of my playfulness or freedom, or like, and I feel like I'm trying to like leave that piece behind, and then I end up kind of rebelling against myself and feeling kind of like I kind of sabotage things. And so I guess my question is like, how do I integrate those two things together, where I'm like growing and maturing and like taking like new steps, but not losing those parts of myself?
Okay, that's a great question. And I was going to say, if you were going to ask, should I be doing that or not? I was going to say, no, you know the answer to that already.
Yeah.
So this is a great question. How do you integrate both of those kind of inclinations and make sure that you're able to move forward without feeling like you need to be letting go of some of the stuff that really just makes you you? Okay, so we'll take a look at that. All right, so when you are ready, please say out loud your full given birth name.
Hannah Mabel Steinmetz.
Okay, Hannah. Again, first I'm going to check in with the color here that represents your original and eternal essence. And the color that I see for you is a very light and kind of silvery blue. So there's a lot of levity in this color already. There's also a very strong connection to spirit. It looks like a lot of communication that is, it's very lighthearted. So spirit communicates with you in ways, and you receive that communication best when you are kind of up above the clouds, if you will, when you are kind of fully exposed to the sun, to the wind, to the elements. So when you are kind of at your most raw, that is when you feel kind of your most genuine. And this silvery color also suggests a deep connection to lunar energy, to divine feminine, and just a really beautiful, and again, a very light color. So I'm going to take a look now at this question of how to integrate some of these desires that you have for growth, and making sure that you are not feeling as though you need to leave behind parts of you that also feel really important and that feel very much a part of who you are. Okay, so the color that I see coming through is kind of a deep orchid, kind of a purpley pink. There's a softness to it, kind of richness. And the word that is coming along with this color, first and foremost, is beauty. And the way that beauty is interpreted by you as you grow. So kind of going along with this theme of being playful, that you mentioned, maybe feeling like you need to leave behind. In the image that I see, you are starting out on a playground, and you are young, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and you're just kind of running around and just tearing around the way that kids do, like this kind of ultimate freedom. And every once in a while, you'll kind of come around to one of the like the equipment that's on the playground. You'll hop on the seesaw, you'll get on a swing, and then you'll hop off again just as quickly and move on to something else. And then as you get older, what I'm seeing is so it's a kind of an evolution of your physical growth. And what's changing in the picture is what happens to be in the playground. So instead of it being just the playground equipment, there's a bench as you get into your adolescence, where you're sitting and you're chatting with friends, you're reading a book, you're taking a walk, and there was a merry-go-round, a very kind of like the really crude but fun ones where you just hop on and you make it go. As you grow older, I still see some of these same elements, but they become kind of these beautiful antiques, like a beautiful antique merry-go-round with the horses painted beautifully. And this is why I say beauty is an important aspect here for you to understand, kind of from an aesthetic standpoint. What does play look like for you now? It doesn't, that might be part of what is changing for you, and part of what you are maybe trying to hold on to. Just giving yourself the permission to think, okay, is knowing that I don't need to let go of that, where am I grasping on to a former idea of what play looked like, and how have I actually evolved? What does that look like for me now? Maybe it doesn't look like tearing around the turf. Maybe it looks like taking a stroll, or maybe it looks like something that a kid wouldn't think would be that interesting, but actually I get a lot of satisfaction out of it, or I'm able to see as I'm walking the beauty of this flower, or feel the warmth of the sun. So keeping what is playful for you rooted in beauty, and rooted in very much in sensuality. So what you're able to experience with your senses, and involving as many of your senses as you can, checking in kind of with the body in that way, and seeing how the body responds to a situation, and staying centered in what your body really gets excited about, really feels lit up by, keeps you from coming back to that place of like, well, this isn't exactly what I had in mind for being playful, no, it doesn't really, that doesn't become a factor. You don't judge quite so much whether, or try to decide, does this fit into what I feel like I should be wanting or needing right now? It's really letting the body guide those experiences and keep you more centered in the present moment so that you're able to appreciate, for their own sake, those experiences that keep you in that sense of youthfulness, but also the experiences that you are reaching toward, or that you are moving in the direction of. So those things that might seem a little more grown up for whatever reason, also using your body as the kind of barometer for what actually is bringing joy and what feels balanced in that way. And it looks like when you do that, it's much easier for you to find how those two actually complement each other very, very elegantly, and that they're not at odds. So I think what I'm seeing in this picture is that either or equation only happens when you kind of get stuck in the intellectualizing, when you're letting beauty lead, when you're letting your sense of when you're letting sensuality be your guide, then you're able to have both and see where both kind of intersect, and then it becomes a much more graceful kind of transition. So I'm going to end the reading here, and we'll move on. Thank you for your
so
question.
much. Thank you. I love that.
Great. Okay.
All right, next up is Jamie.
Hi, Jamie.
Hi. Some of it I might need help in formulating the question. I don't know, I kind of have a lot going on in my head. Some of it, what you've resonated about, like relationships, just me, how did you say it? You mentioned it with your own personal experience, like some of it kind of push people, like essentially you want a relationship, but you maybe push people away, you draw in different energy than what you want. It may not always be the right relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something, just kind of drawing on that, or like why I have these fears of relationships, because ultimately I would like to have like a strong partner and relationship and not be single my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
So some of that is like knowing my purpose in life as far as that goes. And just other relationships, like there's complicated family dynamics.
Sure.
And I just don't know if there'll ever be healing with like my niece and my nephew, or even my mom.
Yeah, that is a lot. I think something that's standing out for me in what you said, and tell me what you think of this, but the word fear kind of jumped out at me, and I wonder how you would feel about taking a look at the maybe the origin of that fear, and possibly a step for clearing that fear out. Because if that is, if there's a kind of general, if that's a theme perhaps running through a number of relationships, that could be something that when we kind of tap into that or unlock that, unravel that a bit, that other things become more clear. What would you think about looking at that energy? Or does that give you another idea for what you would like to do instead?
No, I like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Like
Right. So yeah, so we'll take a look at the energy of that fear, where it's coming from. Take a look at a picture of you clearing that fear, so that you know kind of what that looks like, and then I'll go back into meditation here. And why don't you go ahead and say out loud your full given birth name, please?
Jamie Ann Blackledge.
Okay, Jamie. So the first color that I see that is coming in to kind of create the container for this reading by showing your original essence. It's a deep pink color, very vibrant, very bright, and the image that I'm seeing with it is the image of a flamingo, and since flamingos really they start out much lighter until they kind of draw in some of the resources of their environment. So I know that when they eat a lot of shrimp, they turn this bright color. So part of what this color is showing is your capacity to allow in, to be vulnerable, to let your environment kind of move into your energy field and allow that to light you up. So it's a real strength that you have to be able to kind of absorb what's around you without letting it break you or without letting it tell you how to be. All it does is brightens you. All it does is lights you up. And so it's almost as though anything that comes into your energy field can be fuel for you to use in the way that you find most interesting or most beautiful. And all that it takes is that awareness that this is part of your gift, to be able to do this, for you to be able to kind of use it in that way. But again, just this capacity to let your external environment be fuel, and to be a resource and to be a source of joy for you. There is an alchemy that happens here for you that just feels so natural that you probably don't even know that it's happening. So that's a kind of indication of your original essence. And now we'll look at just going to look at the energy of this fear. And the fear is coming through at this kind of bright, very, very brassy, kind of brazen orange color. And the first thing I want to say about this is that this is not your energy. It's not your fear, but it has taken up residence in your energy system. And this is something that is very normal. We all walk around every single day with plenty of energies that are not our own, because we are, again, we are social creatures. We are energetically connected to everyone. And so the only thing that is quote unquote wrong with that is if it feels wrong to you. And so having this energy in your aura doesn't feel good, very understandably. And what I'm seeing here is this, it's a male energy. And it's connected to your father's energy, but it's also not his energy. And predominantly male. So the men, his family, and their kind of the way that they went through the world, and what this color is showing is just a lot of boldness that comes through in a really sharp and in almost to a point in a cruel way. That there's this idea that the world is cruel, and so cruelty is an acceptable and in fact a desirable way to be. That doesn't necessarily mean cruelty to people, although it doesn't rule that out either. It's more like an assumption that the world is going to get you if you don't get yours first. So this is an energy that was held in your father's family, that was given to him. And it looks like your father had a lot of resistance to that energy. And that part of what he has kind of conveyed to you is that resistance. And that might sound like a good thing, but energetically speaking, resistance, especially resistance to something as powerful and as kind of insidious as fear, is that it can add more weight to that fear. And so understandably, you're wanting this fear out of your system, and so there is a resistance. And so that's the energy that's kind of causing or like wreaking havoc in your aura, wreaking havoc in these relationships. And because it is a family dynamic as well, it's kind of like this this energy of resistance to fear kind of meets the energy of resistance to fear in other members of the family. And it just sort of gets passed back and forth like a really unfortunate kind of ping pong ball game. And so I'm going to take a look now at a step to clear this energy or to lessen the impact of this energy. And the color that I see for you taking that step is a bright yellow, a very, there's a lot of sunlight in this yellow. It's a very pure color, and it's a color that suggests kind of going back to basics. It's a primary color if you're talking about pigment, and it's a mental color, kind of bringing it back to nature. And so there is a connection to nature for you here as well, and taking some lessons from the simplicity and the kind of openness of nature. So one thing that I see you doing is walking out in nature, but you're walking to a point, you're walking just to be out in the open air. But there is a kind of mission that you have. And what I see you doing is trying to engage with and trying to examine as many kind of individual species in nature as you can. So you're asking yourself, okay, how does a flower remain open and not practice resistance? Well, this flower is blooming, in this crack in the sidewalk, even though everything would tell it that it should, that this is not a great environment to grow in. Well, the flower doesn't know that. The flower only does what a flower can do, which is to grow, which is to blossom, and which is to kind of follow its instincts. And so that's a lesson from a flower. What is this bird that just like came right up to me, even though I'm a human and not all humans are going to treat it well? What does that show me about trust, or about, again, kind of being open? So this is what I see kind of on a very practical level. I see you doing to clear some of that fear is looking around you for signs and signals. It doesn't have to just be out in nature, but noticing people, noticing situations where you feel like there is no guard up here, there is no resistance, and that might look like folly, but nothing is happening, like nothing bad is happening, and taking all of that in and kind of creating a little bank, a little like knowledge bank for yourself about what kind of strategies you can use, so that instead of resisting the fear, you can let that fear in, but notice that when you let it in, what it does is pass through. So it doesn't get in and sort of like burrow in. The only thing that makes it do that is the resistance. So this is about kind of opening up all the windows in the house, letting the fear move through to the other side of the house and back out again. And it takes a lot of trust, and it takes a lot of faith that that's actually what's going to happen. But that's how I see you shifting this energy and letting it move through, rather than having it take up the space that it doesn't deserve to take up. All right, so I'm going to close up that reading, and we'll check back in with the group.
Okay, next on the list looks like Andrea.
Okay. Hello.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
My curiosity is around, so for the past decade, I've felt a very strong spiritual pull, and I've been following this movement and flow. And within the last year, a lot has taken place. You could chalk it up to just fatigue and all that, but there's some kind of sense that's more than fatigue or depression. I feel very stuck spiritually. I feel very numb. And it's frustrating sometimes, but it's more just like a feeling of being frozen or stuck and not really having the energy to move, but I want to move. So it's just kind of a weird mix. And I'm just curious what you might pick up from that.
Okay. So are you wanting then to look at that energy and see where that's coming from, and kind of similar to the last reading, like what to do, what you're doing that could clear that, or what your spirit would kind of counsel you to do to clear that?
Yeah, I always like to know why, like the root cause of things. And I know it's not always possible, but if there's any kind of inclination there, love
Okay.
that.
All right. All right, so I'm just going to set up here. Will you go ahead and say your name, please?
Andrea Lee Miller.
Okay, Andrea, so taking a look first at that original essence of your eternal being, the color is beautiful amber. And within this amber, I see many different layers of what looks like kind of a deeper gold, a little bit of orange. There's a great complexity here. And that complexity has to do with the different facets of you, and the different parts of you with which you feel kind of equally comfortable. And that can look very different from day to day, but it's all a part of who you are. There is a way in which you kind of shifting, almost like shape shifting on a day-to-day basis, is one of the ways that you stay in movement. It's one of the ways that you keep your energy kind of vital and fresh and balanced and renewed. And so just acknowledging kind of the sort of multi-dimensionality of this color, and the fact that there are so many different expressions that you have of who you are, that all feel very genuine, and that to give you also permission to allow that to be the case, or not to feel like you have to suppress any of those aspects of yourself in order to fit in, or especially in order to make sense to someone else. The way that you are in all of these different kind of incarnations and expressions is very much real. It's very much who you are. All right, so taking a look now at this energy of feeling stuck, of feeling frozen, of feeling numb, and what that's about, where that's coming from. And then we'll look at a step for clearing that energy. Okay, so the energy of this stuckness is coming through in a kind of silvery fog color. Again, this is not your energy. This is an energy of unconsciousness and of a very high vibration, but one that looks like it prevents you from being in your body. So a lot of the really high vibrations, even though we talk about high vibration and how that's supposed to be a good thing, there are high vibrations that just kind of kick us out of our bodies and don't let us be embodied. So we want high vibrations, but we also want to be able to be kind of grounded in our physical experience. And this is an energy that for you is just, it's just pushing you out. It just keeps you from being able to feel like you're the one kind of operating on a human or on a physical level. So you might be experiencing a lot of interesting insights, but you can't like pull them down into the body in order to like make any forward motion, or to even feel like they're fulfilling in any way. So they become kind of abstract and just like, oh, well, that's interesting, but I don't feel it in my bones or in my heart. And it looks like the energy is not coming from a specific person. This is an energy that is more, it's on a larger scale. So it's both kind of a society energy, but I also see a lot of out of body beings here as well. And these can be beings that sort of get attracted to our energy because they see like, oh, look, she's way up here kind of energetically. She's buzzing up at this level. And And I know what that means. That means that I can get into her body and I can maybe, there's a vacancy there because she is up experiencing these high vibrations. So you've become very attractive through a lot of the work that you've done. You've become very attractive to some of these beings that are just like, oh, well, here's a playground. So there's no, it's not malicious beings. There's no kind of great danger here. It's just like, you've tapped into some insights, you've called attention to yourself, and there's no reason why you need to stop doing that. What I want to make sure is that you're able to find your way back into your body so that you can feel like you are the one who's making your choices. The image, by the way, that I see with this silvery high vibration energy is of you stuck on a mountaintop. And so you have you've made this great climb, you put in all of this effort, and it's extraordinary that you have reached this point, but then you're now at like the oh shit moment where you're just like, I never really thought about how to get back down. I don't want to stay up here forever. And it's like you were prepared. You were prepared to make this journey, but in a certain sense, you also didn't believe quite that you would make it all the way up to the top. And so I think there was never a point at which you prepared to kind of descend or to bring back what you learned. So I'm going to take a look now at a color and a quick image for how your energy is kind of ready or wanting you to shift into a different state. And the color that I see here is a deep purple, and it has a great deal of royalty and of richness to it. And the image that I see in this color is one of you remembering your divinity, and remembering your royalty, remembering that you are a queen on this earth, and that your kingdom is on this earth, and that where the action is here on earth. And that remembering that you don't have to give up that divinity or that connection to spirit when you come back down is enough to allow you to start recentering and to start regrounding. It's like that sense of royalty and that richness and that beauty of this color is what is enticing your spirit to come back down to earth, because there has been a period of time where your energy or your spirit has had this idea that no, to come back down to earth would feel like a failure, or would feel like a kind of grounding in the punishment sense. And your energy and your spirit is wanting to remind you that no, this is the place where we are able to feel our joy and feel our satisfaction and feel our fulfillment. And so it is, it's getting back in touch with your body, but it all starts with this reminder that you are royalty. And then you start finding more joy just in the physical. In reminding yourself that you have a body, and that body is built for action, but it's also built for pleasure. And so, and kind of incorporating as much, I know sensuality came in another reading as well, but kind of feeding your senses with as much beauty and as much indulgence as you want to. That's going to be something also that it makes it more enticing for you to come back down to earth. But that's what I see is both as the challenge that you've been up against, and what I see you doing to shift that energy. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And I see there's a chat here. Okay. All right. And who is next?
So next we have Jillian.
Great.
Okay, I'm hoping that you can help me clarify my question as well.
Okay.
There's a few words that have been popping up for me. They're crossroads, forgiveness, letting go, and stepping into.
Okay.
And there's been a significant relationship change in my life. I also have children who are growing up 18 and 21. I'm in a job that I was in kind of out of necessity in life, and am stepping into a practice, a life coaching practice. And so I just feel crossroads just keeps coming back to me, and kind of knowing when or knowing how, or forgiveness keeps coming up too. That letting go.
Okay, and can you say more about the when and the how, what that is referring to, when and how to do something, or
yeah, I think it's stepping into becoming myself, because I see myself having left this relationship, my kids growing up. I feel like I know what my next step is, but there's something that's holding me back from fully jumping in.
Okay, so the when and the how is, you know the what, it sounds like, but the timing and the means of kind of making that move is where that crossroads is coming in, and where it seems like there's something to do with forgiveness there as well.
Yeah, there's something about needing to let go. Maybe it's children or something. I'm not sure.
All right, so we'll see what comes up here. So
I'm putting my name in the chat.
Perfect. All right, so just getting set up here, and I will peek in a moment for, okay, thank you. Okay, the color that comes up as I'm looking at your original essence, it's a beautiful lavender. And I'm actually seeing fields of lavender, fields that have been, some that have been left a little more wild, some that have been cultivated, but this area that is just absolutely covered and saturated with this color. And there is also a component of that aroma that comes from the lavender. So there's a kind of already a kind of multi-sensory or kind of synesthesia going on, an integration of different ways of appreciating the world, and this is something that your energy really thrives on, is a sense of appreciation for where you are at in a given moment, and being able to see the essence of and the beauty of different ways of experiencing the same thing. So having that visual experience of these flowers, but also having the aroma be a part of it, being able to appreciate that certain of these flowers have been very carefully kind of groomed and tended to, and that others have been allowed to just kind of grow wild. So there's a way in which there's a lot of fluidity with this energy, with your original essence, and that there's not a lot of I would say you don't get caught up in the binary of this or that, of something being one or the other, that for you, at least on a spiritual level, that you're very comfortable with the gray areas, and that you're very, this is where you understand that we are both body and spirit, and not feeling like you have to ever pin someone down, including yourself, to a particular kind of role. So I'm going to take a look now at the question of, as you are, as you know what your next step is, looking at the when and at the how, and seeing how letting go, seeing how forgiveness might play a role in you being able to make some of these decisions, or to feel like you're moving forward. The color that I see is a very, very, very bright pink. It's almost glowing. It's sort of like a pink fire. And the image is that of a phoenix. And I know image is already very symbolic, already very evocative. But what I see happening in this particular moment for you, or in this picture, is that there are sort of parts of this this phoenix that are visible right now, but it is, you know, with the kind of the whole story here of the phoenix coming out of the ash. This phoenix right now is like having a proper ash bath, like really kind of splashing around in it in a way, and really understanding what is being kind of left behind, or what is being moved out of, that there is a desire right now to not make that move just yet, to let the moment of that kind of rising be one where you are able to be an example to others when it does happen. And that right now, what is feeling good, what is feeling nourishing, and what is feeling, frankly, practical is to stay where you're at, because there is a trust, there's an understanding that, of course, the next step is to move up and out of this. And so there, in a way, there's not, I'm not seeing a rush, because what's happening kind of in the ash right now is that you're not continuing to get burned. Like, the fire is your own. You own the fire, and so the ash does not harm you. It doesn't hurt you. It is a place where you get your bearings. It is a place where you get grounded. It's a place where you get your kind of reset button. So this is rebirth. This is not the first time around for you, and you're wanting to take your time here, because it looks like the last time that there was this much of an opportunity for growth for you and transformation on this level, there's a sense that, like, oh, maybe I could have spent a little more time before just trying to jump up and out of things. So what I see in terms of forgiveness for yourself is, and this is forgiveness for yourself, and it has to do with feeling that the last time you had an opportunity to grow in this way, that there was fear, and that you moved away from the thing that was uncomfortable too quickly. Or that is, in retrospect, that's what you think. You think, I would have spent more time there. I would have understood a little bit better. So that's where I see the forgiveness is coming in, is that you just have a different kind of wisdom now than you did before, and that you are willing to kind of be in that discomfort a bit longer, that you're not afraid of that, that you have the stamina, you have the endurance, and it feels in some ways kind of effortless, and it feels very nourishing to you. So that's part of where the forgiveness comes in. Just going to see if there's anything else here about this picture that would come back to your word of crossroads. Okay, so the other component of this picture I see is that it's like a deep cherry red. And what I see in terms of crossroads for you really has to do with what you are going to be, where you're going to get your resources from when you do kind of transcend, or when you do transform into this phoenix. And I see it being experiences that feel a little more juicy. So this deep cherry color has a juiciness to it, and this is what you're going to be looking for. It isn't just things that feel correct. It isn't just things that feel like, yes, I can get what I need. It is, no, where is the juiciness, and where is that, where do I feel like I really, really want to go? So tapping into your desires and not letting that be something that feels like it's a luxury, but that connecting with your desires is really how you move. It's really how you move forward. It's really how you sustain this new energy, because it's going to, when you kind of rise up, you're going to notice that you need a different kind of sustenance. You need a different kind of to power you, because you are a kind of upgraded machine at that point, and you need different fuel, and that fuel is going to come from your desires. So if there's an invitation here, is to start understanding and to make part of this process that you're in right now about understanding what your desires look like, and not discounting them as frivolous. So that's what I see. I'm going to close up that picture, and I'll thank you for your question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Erin.
All right.
Okay, Anna is the last one.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, Erin. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
You? All right. So my question is kind of, as I'm listening to everybody, I'm glad I'm last to try to help me formulate what I'm thinking about. But in this kind of like COVID-19 time, I have had some loss. I have lost my business. I'm not going to say I've lost it. It's just sort of, I've lost the cooking piece of it. And I see, and then I've also ended a relationship within this time, and both of them seem like they would be hard and sad, but it's actually a huge relief. Both of them are huge reliefs to kind of make it so clear to that they weren't kind of serving me. And especially with work, I have this new opportunity that I'm looking to grow with it. And I'm feeling very hopeful in both relationships and in work. And it seems kind of tied together. Like I just stick with things for too long that aren't serving me. And kind of curious to know like how I'm growing through that and how I'm learning for the future. If that.
Great. Yeah. Yes. Yep. Yeah. We are. Well, that's a great question. So how you're growing this opportunity that has come up, these big changes, and what they are offering for you, and throw anything else in there that you want to make sure that I'm touching on.
Feel good about it.
Okay. All right. So please go ahead when you're ready and say your full given birth name.
Anna Kathleen Klimek.
Okay, Anna. The color that I see as I'm looking at your original essence is this wonderful tangerine orange, and it has a lot of clarity in it. There's also the kind of freshness of this fruit, the natural kind of beauty, the natural brightness, but clarity is really the big deal. And what you are able to kind of discern, so discernment within that clarity, a kind of intuitive guidance about where you could be placing your energy in any moment in order to kind of get the most out of this human experience. And that looks to be the priority for you, is understanding your spirit is there's a close connection between your spirit and your body in this life, in the sense that you're never very far away from that kind of that memory that this is what you're here to do, is to experience. So it isn't necessarily about what are you able to do or what is the checklist that you're here to do. You're keenly aware when you're tapped into your spirit that you're here to learn, that you're here to grow, that you're here to experience, and that you're here to enjoy this life. And that's part of where that clarity comes from. So we're going to take a look here at the opportunities that are coming up for you, what you are kind of primed to know and to understand and to learn right now. Okay, the color that is coming through is bright aqua. And the image that I see is of you as looks like an architect. You are in the process of constructing this home, and it is meant to be your home. And you have the plans, the blueprints, kind of all laid out, and there are many of them. So you have spent a great deal of time kind of going through and taking the proper measurements, like doing everything really the way that that it's supposed to be done, and using all of these skills that you have. This is happening for a few moments, and what I see as the kind of big deal of this picture is that at a certain point, and you have this kind of crew working with you, and at a certain point, you kind of like a little bit, just without saying something, you kind of push the plans off to the side, and I see you taking a step back. You're like, actually, I want to do something slightly different than this. And in a sense, you completely go off script with these plans that you have created. And what's happening in this picture right now is that is causing a lot of kind of activity and a lot of kind of consternation with this crew that you're working with. And it takes a little bit of time for them to see that what you're doing is you're starting to, it's not that you are not still using the same principles that you used to create these blueprints. It's just like somehow they kind of all just got downloaded into you. And as they did, they started merging with each other. So there's a very different way in which you're creating right now. So you're still kind of operating within the some of the basic rules of how things work, but you're taking liberties, and you're doing it in such a way that you're able to create something that that no one would have expected. And so in this moment, instead of people, and this is what is frustrating this crew, is that since all this information right now is in you, these people are having really to come to you in order to get their next steps. They can't go away, and they can't kind of look at the blueprint and do the next step. The next step is always coming from you. And so part of what I see is in the opportunity for you right now is getting comfortable with you being kind of the main, like the primary source of information for this group of people, or for any group of people, where they are having to really kind of follow your guidance. And part of what this allows you to do is to find a way of getting so kind of clear for yourself about what that guidance is, that you're able to communicate in a way with each one of these people that puts them back at ease. So this is part of your growth process right now too, is that you are having to communicate differently and more kind of intimately with a lot of different people who bring a lot of different experiences to the table. And that is challenging. It's not easy at first, but this is I would call this a kind of a very fifth chakra picture here. This is a very like your throat chakra and your communication. This is part of what you are stepping into, is being able to communicate with people in a way that makes them feel really seen, really appreciated, and that you're speaking just to them, even if you are kind of addressing an entire group. So there's these nuances to your communication style and your skills that are coming in that are not like nothing that you have even attempted before. And it all starts with this sense for you of like, oh, I don't really need to look at this script anymore. All of this is already in my heart. It's already in my mind, and everything is here. So I don't need to take that extra step of going away and coming back. I can just start communicating, and people are going to get what they need. And part of what I'm doing is helping to let people understand their gifts and understand what they are contributing. So this is your skills kind of taken to a scale that it looks like you hadn't really anticipated before. And you're moving into it with a lot of grace, a lot of ease, and a lot of elegance once you accept that, yes, right now I am the resource, and that is okay. And people might not get it at first, but they will. They will, and you're going to help them get there. And that communication is going to feel like a revelation for everyone. But that's the opportunity that is already unfolding, and that's kind of what awaits you too as you continue like moving forward in whatever it is that you are kind of growing and creating right now. And so I'll close up that picture and we'll call that a reading.
Thank you. That was amazing.
Okay, so we're about an hour over.
Thanks for everyone's patience. Thank you for hanging out here.
Yeah. I really want to be respectful of your time, Erin. If you need to hop off, I can gather questions and then, email them to you, and then I can disperse the questions to everybody, or the answers you have via email if you'd rather do that. Otherwise, everybody that's able can stick around and do a Q&A here. How are you doing on time, Erin?
I can stay for about 10 to 15 more minutes if people do want to hang out.
Okay. So anybody who has a question, just have at it. Take yourself off of mute and ask Erin your question.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah. No, go ahead.
I don't know what my question is truly, but like I want to know more. And like, I don't know, and maybe it's more appropriate just to set up time with you separately, but I just like, it really resonated with me, the emerald green of like my true nature, and it's weird that like green is probably the one color I'm kind of averse to. However, like I look outside right now because like I literally like want to surround myself with nature, and that's the most calming thing to me. And I've really been working on opening my heart, and I know that green is a color associated with that too. And then the shimmery blue, like deep blue, like is really resonating with me too, because I don't know if have seen like a hematite specularite.
Don't think so.
Okay, so that's like my favorite stone ever, and it's that shimmery deep blue, and it just reminded me of that. And so I don't know, this was amazing, and I just wanted to know more. If nobody else,
thank you for sharing that resonated. And I also I just sort of chuckled when you said that the green is the one color you're averse to. I think it can go either way for people, where they feel like, oh yes, that I just want to like bathe myself in that color, or like, no, I'm really resisting my true nature. And that's something we all do in different moments. And one thing I can say for anyone who received a reading, and it's great that we have this recording because you can go back to it, in an amount of time and really kind of get something different from it. But I would encourage each of you to just jot down maybe you did this while the reading was happening, but jot down any impressions that you have or anything that jumped out for you, in either in a strong kind of resonance or a strong kind of like, oh, that doesn't sound right, or I didn't like that. Make notes of that and see how that stuff shifts. I also love that you thought of that hematite, and I don't remember the specularite maybe is what you said, but if that is something that came up for you and you have access to that, or you have one, see what it is that that you can learn from that, either keeping it close to you. It sounds like it's like a crystal that you can like hold, or is that not the case?
It's more like a piece, like a slab.
Okay.
The one I have, but
Okay, so you do have one. So I would just maybe explore your relationship with that, how that relationship might be changing, or what kind of insights, if you ever meditate with crystals, that can be a really powerful way to, like you got that nudge. And so I would say go with that, and really any nudges that come up during a reading as far as like, oh, when she said this, I suddenly thought of this person, or I thought of this memory. Make notes of all of that stuff, because it's all, you know, it might not be a revelation every single time, but these are all like our bodies are so wise, and we get communications from them all the time. And because we are inundated with so much information day in and day out, we can't pay attention to all of it, right? So we start tuning it out selectively, or just kind of a blanket way of tuning it out. But again, I think one of the gifts of this time right now is that we may just have a little more time. I know that's not true for everyone, but when you do find yourself with moments of time, go back to some of those thoughts that came through, and see if that can become a practice for you, where when you get an inclination, when you get a kind of nudge, that you don't just brush it off, that you give it at least, you know, a few seconds of reflection, or take a couple of deep breaths, or try again an image of bringing that thing into your heart and seeing what you gather from that information. Just all of these things are just different ways of interacting with some of the same stuff that we have at our disposal all the time, but just don't really know is there. And then I also think that as more questions come up, I think, yeah, go ahead, let's, you know, get in touch. We can do a quick call. We can see also from there. I think I use readings a lot as a way of helping people kind of understand what kind of healing path they want to take. So sometimes it is a healing in and of itself just to be seen on this level, but often it can kind of point to different areas that might be really like fortuitous and really fruitful for exploring different kinds of healing. So yeah, please reach out.
Thank you.
So I'm just curious, you started off with everybody with the origin color, and then there was a different color that came through for the question. Can you explain exactly how that is, or what?
Sure. Yeah, and it's an interesting question too, because if I were to do a reading with any of you tomorrow, that color or that original essence might show up in a different color. So we're constantly kind of changing the makeup of our aura. And what I will say is that doesn't mean our original essence isn't changing, but I would probably see a different aspect of that tomorrow, because your energy would have shifted. It's sort of like clouds moving in and moving out, and like, what are you able to see in that particular pattern of the clouds on that day? So it is always a different kind of thing. But what I'm doing is I'm looking at color, and I'm looking at pictures. The color especially gets to be very, it's almost like I'm looking at a painting. It doesn't matter what the color is so much, because colors, you know, have a certain resonance to them, and historically and traditionally different meanings to them. But I don't have, at least when I'm doing an aura reading, I don't say like red means this, orange means this. I'm looking at each person's color as though I'm looking at a painting and describing kind of the emotional resonance of that color in that moment. So orange, you know, I don't really think there was overlap in this group, but I could have seen the same color maybe with two people, and it would have had a very different tonality to it, or would have had a very different mood associated with it. So color is such a rich way of looking at energy. And I encourage anyone to, if you sit in meditation, or if even you just close your eyes as you're going to sleep and let kind of colors come through, just start to notice how much color you see, and again, might be kind of dismissing, and then just take it a step further if you feel like you want to, and just say, okay, I keep in my mind's eye or in my imagination today, I keep seeing this color. How does it make me feel? What does it make me want to do? How does my body respond to it? Do I want to wear it? Do I want to, avoid it for whatever reason? And then when I do that original essence color at the beginning of a reading, what I'm really doing is creating a kind of baseline or container for the rest of the reading. So with the individual questions, like when I do a full-on reading, it's about an hour long, and so all the questions that come up, or if we do like a 7-layer aura reading where I go through each of the layers of the aura, it all kind of rolls up into that original essence too. So it's another way of getting information that you might need. So you can kind of put those two readings together. You can say, okay, here was the reading about the phoenix and that pink color. So I can take that on its own, but what happens when I also kind of lay that next to the original essence color? What more information, what more meaning can I take from that? So it becomes just another way of understanding you as an eternal being having this human experience right now. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, time for just one more. If anybody else that hasn't asked a question,
There.
I can't keep track. Now is your chance. One more question here.
My question is just similar. Like, it more left me just wanting more. So I don't know if it's something like schedule something one-on-one and after this, or.
Yeah, I mean, please do reach out, because this is just a sort of a small taste of what your energy can show you, and it's an honor to be able to even just have this kind of tiny peek into your energy. And I want to thank each of you for sharing what you shared. But yeah, please let's chat about getting either more information or doing a longer reading. I think Rachel put all of my information in the email, but Rachel, let me know if there's anything else I can share so that people know where to find me if they want to learn more.
Yeah, so that's typically how I close these interviews. Okay. Is the people watching the replay, if they think you're the coolest fucking chick ever and they're like, how do I work with her? What are the best ways to get a hold of you?
Okay, yeah. So the best way really is to email me, and my email address is Erin, ERIN, at thegoldrunner.com. And the Gold Runner is, I work with gold energy, and it's something that I run through my system. So it's a very sort of literal kind of description of one of the practices that I do every day in meditation. But so Gold Runner, Erin at thegoldrunner.com. My website also is just thegoldrunner.com. And most of my events and classes I will list on Instagram. So I'm not a very heavy Facebook user. I'm trying to kind of get a little more comfortable with it, but Instagram is really how I have shared what's coming up. And also, if you go to my website, you can sign up for my newsletter. So that's another way of staying in touch. But yeah, email is the most straightforward way to reach me, so that we can figure out what would be a good next step for you to get either, again, like a longer reading, or figure out if there's a different type of healing you would like to do, or if you just have some kind of questions about how all of this stuff works, or where you can go to, take the classes so that you can read clairvoyantly as well. So any of that is great.
I am all up in that shit. I want to do that. That's on my list.
Totally.
All the other things. Yeah, if you guys just hop on thegoldrunner.com and just sift through her website, I think there's a tab called offerings, right?
Yes.
And then you can just you can see the list of everything that Erin offers. So just, click on them and just see kind of what intuitively, you're pulled towards.
Yeah, and I do have something up right now, especially that I added to draw some extra attention to the virtual offerings I have, because there is still a lot of work that we can be doing together, even though we can't be in person. It's more some of the kind of more advanced, like kind of spiritual activations, those have to happen in person, but Reiki is an option remotely, and the aura readings. And there's something through the King Solomon lineage that I do called the spark of life, which really gets to vitality and to kind of getting back to feeling like yourself. And then I offer guided meditations where if you share a theme that you really want to receive some guidance on, then I'll record a specific meditation for you. So there are some options for virtual, but all of it is there. Yeah.
Well, I want to just take a few seconds and thank everybody that has been on this call, and everybody that's watching after the recording. Just like we mentioned in the beginning, we've lit the fire. We are all weaving in our own threads to this web. And so thank you so much for jumping on. It's no surprise to me that you're here. And reach out to Erin or me with any questions. I usually in the show notes will include, just to make it simple, our Erin and my email addresses, and then website too, in case that is beneficial to you guys. And that will do it. That will do it for our first group healing session. Thank you so much to Erin for coming on.
Thank you, Rachel. This was really a joy.
Yeah. So fun and so juicy. Okay, guys. Well, here is where I'm going to stop the recording. So we'll see you at the next Manifesting Love and Live interview. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.